Real questions, real answers for real life. Come on in and pull up a chair. You're at 1850 Main Street with Michael DelGiorno and David Zanotti.
Does anyone remember Mr. Smith Goes to Washington? How does a state fill their Senate seat when someone dies?
Yeah, I have a terrible confession to make. This between you and me, I've never seen Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I've never seen Citizen Kane, and I have never seen Gone with the Wind.
Okay, I've never seen Gone with the Wind either. It bores me, but you could be effectively fired and thrown out of this place for not seeing Mr. Smith.
All right, I'll go out.
Washington. Yeah, I mean that is like that just doesn't work. We could throw you out of here for that. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is one of the most epic films of prophetic value in regards to where America would end up.
That was Jimmy Stewart. No.
Boy, that's not even a good Jimmy Stewart, man.
Jimmy Stewart. Is that who that was?
Yeah, but that's you see, you're out of practice. Go watch the movie. Okay.
All right.
The movie is such that the governor has to appoint, and that's a lot of pressure when a governor has to appoint an interim senator, especially this close to a next year election. It's a messy business.
Well, I had the treat to host on KFBK in Sacramento, California on Friday, the very day of Dianne Feinstein's passing, which I thought was interesting that, that God created that opportunity because, one thing about Dianne Feinstein, you can compare her and Barbara Boxer, and I think it speaks for itself. Dianne Feinstein is one of the more balanced Club of 100 traditional, down the middle, would work across party aisles. I couldn't find a lot of legacy to really highlight. I mean, she got the mayorship in San Francisco after a double assassination, and that certainly shaped her anti-gun views. Anti-gun views politically, not personally, where she owned a lot of guns and only melted down one. But what I thought, I thought one interesting take, if I could be hard on the California audience, was this is a woman that was 90 years old. This is a woman who decided in February that she would not seek re-election. This is a woman that could have easily not sought re-election last cycle.
Yeah.
How did the voters and the people of California get put in this position? And some of it is on Dianne for not going away. And then this is not what our founding fathers would have wanted. I got into what the people's house is versus the Senate and states' rights. And of course, none of that is the way the founding fathers envisioned it. Now the Club of 100 thinks they're running the country. They're not representing the rights of the states.
And they are.
It's an unfortunate position for the voters of California and a predictable, unfortunate position for them to be in. And then all eyes turned to Gavin Newsom. And there was the, Lee campaign that was going on. This is a woman of color from the House that wants this seat. And you could put her in, and that would give her an incumbent feel once the term was over. And then there was the inklings coming from the governor's mansion. Well, we should give this more time out of respect to Dianne Feinstein. But then everybody in Washington was like, you can't give this time. Are you kidding me? We got a delicate 50-50 balance. We're being hung to dry over a government shutdown. You got to send me a warm body and a vote ASAP. And so then all the speculation was, well, who does he send? And then the leaks from the governor's mansion was, well, we're going to send somebody that is so obviously temporary to stay out of it. And then he finally does. And who is it? A pro-abortion activist. I mean, you can't make this up.
Yeah, the head of Emily's List in California. So yeah.
What a mess, right?
Be careful what you wish for about someone who is definitely temporary. The Club of 100, being in that club has a way of growing on you pretty quickly. And when you've got a full year before, you have to leave, who knows? You might decide you want to stick around. Clearly a formidable force if it happens that way. So what's interesting is, California, what did we expect, though? What did we expect Gavin Newsom to do?
My first thought was, I don't have Gavin Newsom, California only, and staying on the sidelines. He's either coming out and whatever dysfunction is going to Soros Podesta unfold in the next 12 months, or he's running next cycle. Mm-hmm. I mean, Gavin Newsom's not going to go away. In fact, if we flash forward 4 years from now, no matter who wins, it's an open election, right?
Right.
All right. And if it's an open election, I start looking at two things. Are the Democrats going to want to go back to personality, charisma, and far left? If that's the case, you're going to see the governor of Maryland make a real run at being president of the United States and potentially winning. But he's going to be battling with Gavin Newsom. So when he made this choice, I'm like, is Gavin Newsom playing politics as a future presidential candidate, or is he playing politics as a governor within the constituency of California liberal Democrats? And I don't know how to read this because it could be both. If it's the latter, well, then he is quadrupling down, and this guy is running for president, and he wants the battle to be about abortion, not about the economy, not about the border. He wants it back on abortion. And if that's the case, it's a tell at the poker table. And he just played presidential politics with the United States Senate seat.
Yeah, I think you've got a very well-connected thought there, because the issues that are coming up, and the presidential election will be issue-driven. You said no matter who runs, it'll be an open seat. That's presuming it's Biden or Trump, and one of them gets elected, because both can only serve for one more term. So that would be an open seat. If it's somebody else, now it could be 8 years. So just so somebody doesn't turn around and
actually, David, if it's Trump, he could refuse to leave. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
And here we go again. All right. So the two issues, because we've been talking a lot about the presidential election, even though in my heart of hearts, my entire focus of 43 years in public policy with the American Policy Roundtable has been Article 1, is trying to peel Americans off of our pathetic addiction to the presidency and understand the government of this country is run by Congress. And if we would put that as a priority, the way John Podesta and George Soros do, see, they always win because they're always controlling Congress. If you go back to World War II, there's only been a few tiny times when the Republicans have controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Just a few tiny times when they've had the House and the Senate and not the presidency. A few teeny tiny times. Every other time, it's either been split or it's been in Democrat control. That's because Republicans are addicted to the presidency. They want, and it's tragic, but it's real. Okay, so the focus should be Article 1.
Nobody is more of a student of history than you. So don't take this as an interruption. When do you think the last time America was a government of, for, and by the people and focused on the people's house and not the presidency? And is it really when we get to FDR that we were on a world stage in a world battle? And
no, I'll tell you where it was. It's your favorite.
You're
your
going to go
favorite
back to
of all
Kennedy.
times.
Okay, maybe.
Yeah, simply because of one thing. It's television.
Or Kennedy plus Reagan equals.
No, it's television. Once you had television and you had televised debates and you had the White House on television every day, it became a question of central casting. And then since the president always got priority on everything, we fell into the trap of believing that one person is really in charge here. And that's not the way our government works.
I've been guilty of that throughout my life too, you know.
Guilty of what? Worshiping John F. Kennedy?
No. This guy is really getting me. No, I have gotten sucked into personality presidential politics or an outrageous obsession with the top of the ticket. Yeah. And, you know, as long as W won, it was a great election, even though we lost control of the Congress, even though we lost control of the Senate.
Yeah, exactly.
We all got to guard against that, and we have all failed that. Now, I haven't had a problem with that for about 15 years, I can tell you.
So the second piece where it blew wide open was when the Supreme Court went totally rogue in 1973 on Roe versus Wade and began to do judicial activism on steroids. Right. Then the concept of the president picks the justices even amplified the situation worse. But we forget that the president picks them, but the Congress has to basically ratify them. Yeah. So they've got to move them forward and confirm them. So, okay. All right. So that's an excellent question. So now we get back to two biggest issues. People see one coming, they don't see the other. Abortion is a huge issue. I'm telling you that the Democratic left is absolutely orchestrating everything from Newsom's appointment to the Senate seat to the ballot issues that are happening all across the country between now and the presidential election. They really believe that abortion is their way of a wedge issue. It's their number one wedge issue. They will split the country, and they'll end up with the bigger piece of the voting in the Electoral College because of abortion. That's their whole plan. The second issue that nobody sees coming is housing, is the desperate straits of losing a housing market, the absolute depression, the collapse of being able to buy a home because of the artificial interest rate structure that has been manipulated by the Federal Reserve in line with the Biden philosophy of absolute command and control over this country's economy. And whether it's energy or housing prices, this is something that they don't see coming, but it is coming. There is an entire world of voters out there that are so frustrated.
And it'll be here by next year. That's the difference. What the Americans are going to be feeling, even in the early primaries versus heading into the convention, is a much different climate than what they're feeling, albeit premature. I mean, we didn't used to start debates a year or 14 months before an election. I think you're right. I think life is still a big issue on both sides. I don't know if you want to call it. I sense for the longest time that the left always hid behind it's a woman's right to choose and choice. And we got further and further away. Is life sacred? When does it begin? Is this murder? And that was all convenient for Americans, quite frankly, from a PR standpoint. Then I would say things have shifted more. They wouldn't like it if I said, well, they're now actually acting very pro-death versus the opposition that is pro-life. That's kind of where America finds itself when we're trying to find a week we're comfortable with taking a child's life. But I think that they would definitely probably not mind me saying it this way. Life begins when it's wanted. That seems to be what they're quadrupling down on. And I agree, it's a wedge issue for both sides. I think LGBTQ is running out of gas. I think racial division and equity and equality is running out of gas. And I agree. The border, energy, jobs, inflation, and because of inflation, what is supposed to be a temporary cooling off of spending by raising rates is looking a lot less temporary and a lot more like recession, or if we have another housing collapse, maybe even a depression. That is all going to be capturing everybody's attention and imagination. And I'll tell you what, those 8 or so on the stage at that second Republican debate need to stop fighting with each other and get on point with that. But the left and Joe Biden have yet to even address that.
And no one is talking about housing. You can't have a collapse when you got no market. No one is talking about the depression in housing. People cannot buy homes because the homes don't exist. The lowest inventory in the history of modern recording of real estate. We don't have any homes to be able to buy. The gap between interest rates that continue to rise and where people are sitting in 2.5%, 3% money versus now 8% plus money, there's no available homes that are being moved to the market. We're in a situation where you can't get a house.
Well, when I talk about collapse and crisis, it would be that if because of that, home values start coming down. And if they come down dramatically, a lot of people have borrowed against that value that no longer exists. Now you start having defaults. So that's why I brought that up. But to give you the Lee Corso, not so fast. Don't forget, the guy with the plane has the advantage, and the guy with the plane, and if
guy with the biggest plane,
yeah, however you say it. And if all of this is an administrative state headed by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, you might see the manipulation of those interest rates to come down to kick the can past the election cycle. So they do have some.
You think that they would actually, after ruining so many people's lives at this level, you think they might in January turn the switch? How could they get interest rates from 8% to 4 or 5% in that brief period of time and not look like they've basically manipulated the whole process?
Well, the Fed has speculated that they'd like to get them down to 3% by the end of next year. That's not looking at all possible, not if it's generated by inflation. Now, if we're going to play fantasy, just like we do every day, print money, spend money we don't have, which is the cause of inflation, it couldn't possibly happen.
But it's totally artificial. I mean, they're totally artificially raising them. And now if they totally artificially drop them, it'd be like gasoline prices 90 days before the election dropping to $1.59. I mean, it's like people are going to say, what?
No, they've done it before and got away with it. What do you mean? You really don't think they're going to?
No.
They could.
No. See,
if they're smart, they would.
but see, they've overplayed their hand at such a level that they can't bring it back.
Michael began in talk radio over 30 years ago. David has been working in the field of public policy and media for over 40 years. They've been around and seen a lot. To learn more about Michael and David, visit 1850mainstreet.com.
They just can't bring it back. So I say the housing crisis is the sleeper of the election, but the one that's out there right now in big lights is the question of abortion. And that's moving its way through states and moving its way through on ballot issues. It's in Ohio right now, massive issue there. Voting is about to begin in Ohio on an issue the whole world's watching. An absurd issue, by the way, I might add, because we've been analyzing it, we've been working on it. But then it's coming to California, and it's coming to Arizona, it's coming to New York, coming to Florida next year. So that's the other hand that they're playing.
And who's it to get out to vote for? You know, it's a two-edged sword. You've been doing this. We both, by the way, discussed this before. We both came to the abortion issue motivated by the sacredness of life, I think biblically and morally, and also by a same song by Phil Keaggy, who will speak up for the little ones. And so while you've done it at a high political level and in courtrooms, I've done it in the public courtroom of public opinion on the air, but I have always been first and foremost for life. Probably secondly, I've dedicated my life to homelessness and to pets and adoption. So, I mean, this is a number one issue for both of us. If you speak in absolutes, there will be no abortion. There will only be abortion. Then we can start getting into traditional percentages and how people have handled the politics of abortion. But now that we're having reasonable discussions about who this decision belongs to, the people at the state level, state by state deciding, and reasonableness of weeks, it starts tipping. America's far more pro-life than they are pro-abortion. And if they ever wake up to the chemical aspect of this and affordability of this that makes most of these old arguments archaic, they're going to really start falling out of line with the left.
Well, and I'll give you a perfect example of that. There was an Associated Press article that came out, we were quoted in recently, about the fight that's going on in Ohio. And the last paragraph in the story was a quote from NARAL, which was unfortunately very poorly placed because no one that had contributed to the article above the last paragraph had a chance to counter. But the article was basically about the fact that pro-life organizations, individuals, leaders are having to rethink all of these pieces and parts because now that Roe has fallen and the issue has come back to the people and their representatives and the fight is going on in the state, now for the first time, people are actually having to think through all the different options, all the pieces, how the law works, where it falls down, where there needs to be protections. What is amazing, Michael, is that NARAL and the abortion industry wants everybody to believe it's just what you said it is. It's either absolutely no abortions or all abortions, and nobody's there. I can't find one person in the pro-life community that would want for a moment to take away the protection of a woman's life and health. And the reason we say it is life and health, because rightly worded, those things are almost always the same thing. That there are rare occasions, less than 0.1%. Some of the fetal syndromes involve less than 1 in 15,000 pregnancies, but they do happen. Where it's clear that the developing child is morbid. The child will not survive. Well, no chance of survival. And that situation in some of the most rare cases presents a serious physical health problem and or life problem to the mother. Now, there's nobody, I have met no one on this planet that does not want to make ending that pregnancy a viable option for the mother. I met no one. Yet NARAL pretends that pro-lifers want no abortion, period, under any circumstance. And that's a lie. And that's a lie. And it drives me crazy because it's not true. I can't find it. And that's in the most extreme cases. And then it moves its way back to where still you have a huge consensus of people that are in favor of some significant form of abortion regulation, and in particular the point you make, which is chemical abortions. That is a nightmare that's happening right now. You know that 54% of all abortions that are happening right now are chemical. And people have no idea when they take those pills. Women have no idea what's really going to happen to them. And that's a really tough story. I spent several hours recently with Abby Johnson, who was Planned Parenthood Employee of the Year in 2008. She was a Planned Parenthood clinic manager. She was, as inside as you could get in the organization. She left and started an organization to help bring women out of the abortion world, and it helped bring abortion workers out because of what it ended up doing to her. And I will tell you, when you talk to people that are on the ground and who've actually lived and seen what this is, the debate is so far removed from the politics you can't believe it.
Because it's anything but choice once you're in those clinics.
It's a terrible situation. It's manipulation. It's a mess. And if people ever get the real look at what's going on, and I hope they will, Abby Johnson's got a great book out. She's actually got 4 books out, and or 3 out and 1 coming. Look up Abby Johnson and get her stuff, because her work and her ministry will bring people to reality on this issue, and you will see how far the political debate is from the real world.
I would just like to invite people to listen to the Public Square, your other broadcast, in the time that you spent with her, and you can do that at thepublicsquare.com. It's a show I'm a fan of, and I would invite them all to listen. Scary confession. I have never voted for anybody that wasn't pro-life in my life. But times are changing, and after decades of deficit spending by both parties, debt that is now accumulating to about $250,000 to $300,000 per tax-paying family, kids entering college, embarking on creating a life, I hope, better than the one I had, so jobs and future, and then the abuses of power I saw with COVID have really changed things. And I find myself in a real dilemma, and that is that I think if I really put things on paper, I would put life first. But I wonder as a voter if I'm really thinking that.
Well, what races are you talking about? You talking about the federal races, state races? What are you talking about?
Federal.
Presidency?
Presidency for one, which should even be an abortion issue, but we know that it is because it's misplaced. But it really ought to be a primary thing we look at for members of Congress, for governors, for state representatives and state senators. That's where that is key. But what I want to get into is just this feeling of, I see a corruption in America. It sounds like I'm going to do RFK's job for him. I see corruption in America. I see 2 flawed two-party systems that must end. I see people that must awaken to their duty. They must prioritize reasonable and responsible and balanced zero-based budgets and a paying down of the debt if our children are going to have a future. And I look at what's kind of shaping, and the left seems to be, they realize woke is starting to be broke. So I think they would be unwise to try to make a wedge issue of the LGBTQ movement or the race movement. I think you're right that they're going to quadruple down on this life issue. But what's going to be their message to jobs and interest rates and home values and energy prices and failed border? And for those that see COVID for what it was, weaponized to divide, and out of control inflation, which is caused by overspending that we pay for in the ultimate silent tax, which is the costs of goods and services, especially home energy and gasoline. I don't even get a glimpse. I mean, if Joe Biden is it's just more of the moral future of democracy, right? He's not even addressing these issues. Well, I guess what it boils down to is if it's not abortion, what is their play on the left?
That is a profound question. Could it be because they've got an ancient president who has messed everything else up? All they can do is distract and throw something like abortion at people. Because right now, that looks like it's the only play they've got. And it's the only one, whether it's Gavin Newsom or an Ohio ballot issue or all the ballot issues that are coming in 24, it looks like that's the only play they've got.
Well, you're not going to bring up healthcare, right? You're not going to bring up the border, right? You can't bring up LGBTQ and race, right? You don't even have an Obama to pull it off.
No, but before we start sounding like Sean Hannity, let's just stop for a second. All right. I think you figured it out. That's all they got.
That's all they got.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.